Apples are not as gross as avocados or mangoes, but still, apples are like margarine and cucumber mashed together. It's like cucumbers and margarine mashed together. Yeah. Although actually, cucumbers alone are quite nice, and maybe with margarine it will work well, but avocados just don't work. All right, I'll just open the file. All right, let's start with, first of all, let's start the recording. Let's start with the Heart Sutra. Sorry? All right. I prostrated the Arya triple gem, thus did it here at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on massive Vajra mountains in Rajgira, together with a great community of monks and a great community of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. Hachi, any son of the lineage trainer, wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom. He said that the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom, should look upon like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition of factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition of factors, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on up to including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extension of ignorance and so on up to including no aging and death and no extension of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattva relying on dwelling perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration, without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three kingdoms also manifestly completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of the great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering shall be known as the truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata Om Gate Gate Para Samgate Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose in that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated, even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the worlds of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain this state of Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain this state of a Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the highest assembly. From the accumulations that I collect by listening to the teachings, may I attain the state of a Buddha to be able to benefit all sentient beings. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. So for those of you who haven't heard the news, then Geshe Sharab, who taught here at the center a few times and also in other community centers around the world, I think that he lives in the US, Santa Fe, right? Santa Fe, yeah. He's down with COVID-19 for the past 13 days and apparently has some liver damage and pneumonia. So keeping in your thoughts and hopefully it will recover. I mean, we don't know how bad it is, but it doesn't sound good to have liver damage and pneumonia. All right, so today we've finished the effect of the cultivation of the exchange between self and others. So the actual exchange was, we spoke about it in the last couple of days. So it is putting ourselves in the position of others, looking back at ourselves, antidoting afflictions in our own mind stream, which create that separation between ourselves and others. I mean, they're based on ignorance, which sees ourselves as existing in and of ourselves, independently from others. And because of that, we either look down on others, or we compete with others, or we put ourselves on par with others. Kind of, we have, in that sense, kind of, we are either envious of those who are much higher than us, or we think that actually we're already at that level like them. So we put ourselves in the position of others and look back at ourselves as being those who aspire to develop bodhicitta. And we use that approach, first of all, in order to reduce our afflictions, right? So normally, actually, it's quite interesting, because normally when you think of how we apply local antidotes to the afflictions, and we spoke about it before. So we said that the local antidotes to the afflictions, like, for example, for attachment, you meditate of, the common antidote is to meditate on the unattractive aspects of the object. With anger, we meditate on loving kindness or compassion. With pride, an antidote to pride is to meditate on the classification of phenomena, and an antidote to jealousy is to rejoice. Those are the common antidotes. But here it seems that Shantideva is offering another local antidote that can work in a very powerful way, which is to put ourselves in the position of others and to look back at us and see how we're not actually practicing like we should be practicing. So that's also a really powerful antidote, a local antidote to our situation. So the purpose of such a practice is, first of all, to apply an antidote to the afflictions, but also to be able to empathize with other living beings, to put ourselves in their shoes and see how they feel, and then to extend compassion, or a mind of cherishing others when we put ourselves in their positions. And this is the purpose of the exchange between self and others, right? So we look at the drawbacks of cherishing ourselves, and we look at the benefits of cherishing others. And in the actual exchange, we do that exchange, the result of which should be that we cherish others better. So why am I saying that? Because now we're looking at the effects of cultivation. So the effect of cultivation consists of the four points. I think that today we've started off with verse 157, I think. Yeah, but we think of the disadvantages of self-cherishing and the proof that the benefits of cherishing others are limitless. And I think that this is what we often say in this teaching, but also in many other teachings as well. We said that so far, we have been trying to accomplish our own happiness and well-being in cherishing ourselves, right? So our main focus was ourselves. How can I be happy? How can I be well? How can I avoid problems? How can I avoid difficulties? So this is our orientation, and we're so used to that, right? I mean, whenever I experience problems or difficulties, when I think of how a certain situation could work out for me, I'm always at the center of my attention. It is hardly that other living beings are the center of my attention. So when I think of, for example, future planning or future things I could do, things I can do in the future, I think that my main consideration normally is like, how can it work for me, rather than what's the best, the most benefit that I can bring to sentient beings. Please, this is still how my mind works. So here Shantideva says that we've been trying to do it all along, since time without beginning and up until now. And indeed, when we look at our current situation, we come to see that it hasn't actually worked for us so far. So I think that we can recognize that, but it's still hard to uproot old habits. We're still trying to accomplish our own happiness and well-being, either temporary or long-lasting, but still the bulk of the attention, the main attention, is on ourselves, rather than thinking what would be of benefit to others. And also, Shantideva says that not only we've been trying to accomplish our own happiness in focusing on self with an attitude of self-cherishing, it also came along with neglecting others, sometimes just not thinking about them, but also I think that most of the time it's thinking that if I get what I need, then even if others are harmed along the way, directly or indirectly, well, what can I do? At least I get what I want. So this is also the source of all our problems. So then it says, let's try it out differently. In order to accomplish my happiness and well-being, rather than focusing on myself, I'm going to focus on others. I'm going to cherish others as a way of accomplishing my own welfare indirectly. So I think that we spoke about it many times before, and also we spoke about it today. Let's just read through those verses, and I wanted to maybe pull out one point from that. So just going to sort out my screen. Just a second. All right. So halfway through verse 154, it says, for hundreds of lifetimes in cyclic existence, he caused harm to me. He is the self-cherishing attitude. It's quite interesting that in English, his self-cherishing attitude is a he. Yeah. Works for you. All right. So mine, because of desiring to enact your own purpose. Sorry? Yeah, because Shantideva was a monk. Mine, because of desiring to enact your own purpose, such great weariness you have gone through over countless past eons has only achieved suffering. And then it says that therefore I should change my orientation, rather than trying to accomplish what I want, what in happiness and well-being, focusing on myself with a self-cherishing attitude, I will do that in cherishing others. Therefore, I shall definitely engage myself in the purpose of others. Since the words of the Muni are infallible, I shall behold its good qualities in the future. So not only says here that let's try something else, I'm going to try to cherish others more than myself. He says that I should do that because the Buddha said so, and the Buddha's words are infallible. So here it demands that we have faith in the teachings of the Buddha in order to work out that actually it's good for us to accomplish our welfare, it's good for us to cherish others in order to accomplish our welfare. So I wanted to first of all see what Khenpo Kumpen says with respect to that in his commentary in page 304, and then going to 305. So it says, he tells his mind it should be convinced that all self-centered actions result in suffering, whereas now or in the future, whether now or in the future, and that it should now begin instead to work enthusiastically only for the good of beings by means of the practice of exchange. Then it says the Buddha has declared that working for the welfare of others will result in great happiness in all one's lives. And the words of the omniscient Buddha are utterly certain and never deceive. Moreover, as one works for the benefit of others, and as in due course, one gradually attains the grounds of realization, one will perceive the excellent qualities that derive from such actions. They will become manifest. So I wanted to draw on that section because here it seems that what Kempo Kumpel says in his commentary is that you begin with belief in the Buddha. So when we look at the three types of object of comprehension, there are things that are, there are manifest objects, which means things that are evident mainly to our sense consciousnesses, but they can also be evident to our mental consciousness, right? So those things are manifest phenomena. Then we have things that are slightly hidden, which we need to rely upon a correct reason in order to realize them. Like, for example, take my body. It is impermanent because it changes from moment to moment. So that momentary change, disintegration from moment to moment, is the reason that I use in order to prove that my body is impermanent. So the impermanence of my body is slightly hidden, could be slightly hidden to my mental consciousness. And I will need to depend upon a correct reason in order to initially realize that. And there are other things that we need to rely upon a correct reason in order to initially realize them. Like, for example, when we look at the nature of our body, the nature of our body is uncleanliness, because you can say that from the point of view of the causes that produce the body, the causes are unclean. From the point of view of the nature of the body, consisting of the 36 unclean substances, bones and blood and semen and urine and so forth, the body is unclean. From the point of view of what exists from the body, urine and so forth, the body is unclean. So I use such reasons in order to prove that the nature of the body is unclean. So those things are slightly hidden in that I can rely upon a correct reason, which is not overly complicated in order to realize that. But also emptiness is a slightly hidden phenomenon in that I can rely upon correct reasons in order to prove that I am empty of inherent existence. Like, for example, you can say, take myself, I do not inherently exist because I am a dependent arising. Take myself, I do not inherently exist because I depend upon cause and conditions. By the way, just realizing that I depend upon cause and conditions and therefore I do not inherently exist, it's a correct reason, but it's not that you can rely only on that in order to realize emptiness, because had it been the case that it would be as simple as realizing that I depend upon cause and conditions and therefore I'm empty of inherent existence, everyone would probably could have realized emptiness quite quickly, right? So it's not as easy, but it's still a correct reason. So to realize emptiness, we need to kind of get at a more subtle level of dependent arising, in which we understand that there's no objective existence whatsoever, that I merely exist, that exists as merely being imputed by language and conceptions. But anyway, that's still a reason that I can use, work out with that reason in my mind in order to understand that I do not inherently exist. But then there are things that are extremely hidden phenomena, and these are the working of karma. So when you look at what, for example, Nagarjuna said in his, I think that it's in a Precious Garland. I think it wasn't in his Precious Garland, but it's certainly drawing from the teachings of the Buddha. So he said, from generosity, resources, from ethics, happiness. What he meant is good state of rebirth or happy states of rebirth. From patience, we get a beautiful appearance. From joyous effort, we get diligence. From concentration, we have a concentrated mind or a single pointed mind. And from wisdom, we have a liberated mind or a tamed mind. So in general, we can we might understand on a cost level that being generous would mean that in the future you'll have more resources, but more specifically understanding all the ins and outs of the working of karma. In that, for example, if I practice generosity today towards a poor person, in the future, it will result in a specific situation in samsara where I'll be rewarded. Or like, for example, now if today someone shouts me a cup of coffee, to know that this is a result of generosity that I've done in 2 lifetimes ago in this particular situation is a knowledge that is available only to a Buddha, you could say. So that's a extremely hidden, these are extremely hidden phenomena for us. So I think that when it says here that, so there's, when we understand those 3 levels of 3 objects of comprehension, the manifest, the slightly hidden and extremely hidden, we use, first of all, you can say perceptual consciousnesses to realize the manifest phenomena. So for example, we use sense consciousnesses in order to realize things that are evident, sounds and smells and taste and so forth. But we can also use mental consciousness in order to realize them. Then we have things which are slightly hidden, which are realized by an inference by the power of the fact. So we have an inferential valid cognizer, which relies upon a correct reason and its basis. And it depends upon that, we can realize them. We'll study that actually in a couple of months when we start with our logic studies. Then we have the realization of extremely hidden phenomena, which is done on the basis of belief in scripture. So it's quite hard, isn't it, to develop a belief in scripture to the point in which you come to realize a particular topic. So you realize that, for example, the teachings on the Buddha are saying that from generosity come ethics, from generosity come resources, and from ethics, good states of rebirth, happy states of rebirth, is done through belief in the scriptures of the Buddha, which are free from faults. So they are purified by 3 types of reasoning. So that requires quite a lot of effort in order to develop that sense of trust in the teachings of the Buddha. So here, I wanted to just connect it with this point that says, since the words of the Muni are infallible, I shall behold its good qualities in the future. So I'm thinking, how does it apply to our practice? How do we practice it at the moment? Have we got to the point where we have, we can generate a realization at the level of belief that since the Buddha said so, definitely we should cherish others? I think that probably for most of us, I mean, not for, definitely for me, I haven't got to the point where I have realized that point, but we begin with looking at other teachings of the Buddha, or looking at the other things that we've covered here in Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life. And I think that when we look at the Patience chapter, Josephus chapter, the things that we've covered before, even in this chapter, we can see the validity of these points and then come to see how it is very much so with cherishing others, that since the Buddha said that cherishing others will bring about happiness, even if I don't see it now directly, evidently, I can still trust those words. But there's, I think, kind of still quite a lot of work that we need to do in studying, reflecting, meditating on the teachings of the Buddha until we can get that deep sense of conviction that this is totally what it's good for us. Particularly, I think that in this situation, when we think of cherishing others is the foundation of all good qualities, or all that is good, I think it's easy to accept that. But then when we put in situations when we feel completely uncomfortable, when we have to relinquish our own happiness and well-being, we have to get by on less. We either have, no, we don't get away and others get away. And we have to think that, well, this is the key for our future happiness. Is quite difficult. Now, this is where it becomes quite difficult. And this is where we need to think, do I have trust in the teachings of the Buddha? Pretty hard. So that's one point that I wanted to pull out today. So today we started with explaining the benefits and qualities, and then instructions on making effort to cherish others. So 157 and 158. If in the past you had practiced this act, situation dissimilar to the happiness of fulfillment of a Buddha could not have been possible. So basically what it says that had we tried to accomplish our own happiness through cherishing others, have we actually tried exchanging a self-cherishing for a self-cherishing attitude, for an other-cherishing attitude, we would have long ago been in a better position. But since we haven't done it so far, we still find ourselves experiencing problems. So Khenpo Kumpa says, continuing to address his own mind, Shantideva observes that if in earlier existences it had undertaken such a practice, performing the exchange of self and others, it would now be experiencing a state of bliss like the Buddha Shakyamuni or Amitabha, who are objects of offering of the three worlds. He would possess a body adorned with the major and minor marks of Buddhahood. He would have speech as melodious as of a Brahma and an omniscient mind, together with every perfection. It would no longer be in samsara, and as he is at present controlled by negative emotions, tormented by suffering in the present moment, and with no surety that he will escape the falling into the lower realms in his next life. It is thus that Shantideva instructs us about the resulting profit or danger of having either an altruistic or egoistic attitude. Yeah, so had we done it before, we would have long ago been in a better position. It seems that that's the main point. And then comes the point where in verse 159 that we had a bit of discussion with Geshe-la today, and I wanted maybe to highlight some of these points. Actually, it's verse 158. Therefore, just as you held this eye, the drops of sperm and blood of others, likewise familiarize with others. So Geshe-la today spoke about the innate grasping at the self, whether it is grasping at I, or whether it is grasping at my body and so forth. So I wanted just to maybe put some context into Geshe-la's explanation of today. But before I do that, let's just look at what Khenpo Kumpel says in his commentary. So he says, Shantideva addresses again his own mind. It has identified drops of his parents' generative substances, which are devoid of I or self, and has clung to them through it, though it were itself. Now it must make every effort in taking sentient beings as itself. This verse brings to a conclusion the teaching on exchange. So this is still a point that is going on in my mind, because it seems that when we look at the two commentaries, both Khenpo Kumpel's commentary and also Geta Dhamma Rinpoche's commentary, it seems that both of them are saying that we should take other living beings as being ourselves. But Geshe-la's way of explaining that is saying that rather than thinking of other sentient beings as myself, you think about them as just like being part of yourself, like being they are mine. And this presentation, I think that presenting it like that is also keeping in line with what Lama Tsongkhapa says in his Lamrim Chenmo, that you do not think that you do not make yourself others and others as yourself. Sorry? Yeah. So what Geshe-la is saying is that we have, first of all, ignorance of grasping at ourselves, grasping at me, my person. And we've developed this on the basis of the way that we apprehend I and mine. So I'll start with maybe a couple of comments that I made in my tutorial notes. So according to all Buddhist philosophies, all Buddhist schools of thought, so the root of cyclic existence is ignorance. That's the kind of the most general statement. The root of cyclic existence is ignorance. Then we go deeper into that. The root of cyclic existence is ignorance of grasping at the self. But then we become more specific. All schools of thought say that the root of cyclic existence is the innate view of the perishing collection. So the innate view of the perishing collection is an innate grasping at the self of persons. Sorry? So we say that the root of cyclic existence is ignorance of grasping at the self. Now, all schools of thought say that a problem is not understanding who we are as person individually. Going beyond that, because we do not understand who we are, we come up with a fictitious sense of self, as if we exist objectively or independently. So that is with respect to ourselves, rather than other people, it's with respect to ourselves. So this is what we call the view of the perishing collection. There is an intellectually acquired level of that, and there is an innate level of that. And the root of cyclic existence of samsara is said to be the innate grasping at ourselves. This is what Buddhist schools of thought say in general. But then when you look at what different schools of thought explain to be the grasping at ourselves, they speak about different things, different levels of grasping at ourselves. There are those that explain it on the cause level. And then you have the middle way consequence school that explains it to the most subtle level. So to begin with, when we look at what is the view of the perishing collection, we said that it is grasping at a person that is me, as if I'm an established self. So from the text on minds and mental factors, as the view of the perishing collection is a mental factor, it is said to be that it is an afflicted wisdom. To say that it is an afflicted wisdom, it means that it's not a real wisdom. It is something that is similar to wisdom. It is similar to the wisdom from the point of view of having maybe an analysis or investigation, checking out different things and coming to a conclusion. So since it operates in a way that is similar to wisdom, it is called an afflicted wisdom, but it's not a real wisdom. So it's an afflicted wisdom that observes the appropriate, that aggregates and apprehends them as a real I and mine. So we focus on ourselves. I have my body and I have the mental aggregates, feeling, discrimination, composition, factors, and consciousness. So the view of the perishing collection observes my body and mind and holds them to be, or it depends upon that. It holds a real I and mine. It observes them as a real I and mine. So we have I and we have mine. So if you wonder what is mine in relation to the view of the perishing collection, well, for example, my body is mine. My mind is mine. These are what we call phenomena, right? So you have I, when I grasp at myself, this is grasping at the self of persons. And then you have my body and my mind, holding them to be inherently existent. I'm grasping at the self of phenomena because my body is phenomena and my mind is phenomena, which are different to persons, that are other than persons. So I'm just kind of explaining some bits about what Geshe said today with respect to the innate grasping at self. So then The middle way consequence school of thought says, let's look at this view of the Persian collection. All schools of thought say that it is grasping at itself of person. So what about mind? Like, for example, if I'm grasping at my body to exist inherently, if I'm grasping at my mind to exist inherently, these are phenomena. So how am I grasping at a self of persons? Yeah, they're not, because if I grasp with my body or with my mind to exist independently, to exist truly, I'm grasping at a self of phenomena. So the middle way consequence school has a way of explaining that, which is interesting. So it says that actually when we speak about mind, when we speak about mind, I'm not actually speaking about what is mind. I'm just holding strongly to what is mine with a strong sense of grasping at me. This is mine, so therefore I'm grasping at me. In Tibetan, it's more clear because the word for me in Tibetan is nga. The word for mine is ngaiwa, right? So I'm using this term I, nga, and I change it into ngaiwa, what belongs to me, what belongs to the I. So the middle way consequence school says that since I speak about me or I within mine, I'm still grasping at myself as if I exist in and of myself independently. So therefore, just for the sake of clarity, so the view of the Persian collection, grasping at I. According to the middle way consequence school of thought, the focal object is I. Also, when you grasp at mind, the focal object is still I because I grasp at what belongs to me. And both of the mode of apprehension is inherently existent. So I inherently exist and I inherently exist in relation to I and mine. So what Geshe-la was saying today in relation to that is that when we think of my body, so the innate grasping at a self that is focusing on, you could say, the body, is not thinking of the body as body, kind of as I. It just thinks about it as mine. And through thinking, for example, of the body as mine, it emphasizes the I, and therefore it is an innate grasping at itself, right? So it doesn't hold the body to be I. It says that we actually come to think of the body. We don't think of the body as I. We come to think of the body as mine, and we come to think of the body as mine because of a process of familiarity, habituation. And this is what Shantideva says here with respect to the generative substances that came from my father and mother. So therefore, just as you held as I these drops of sperm and blood of others. So we can understand these two lines in two ways. So you can say, just as you held as mine these drops of sperm and blood of others. And when we say mine, what we emphasize is I within the view of the Persian collection, right? So although the view of, no, so we said that the view of the Persian collection, observing mine, does not observe what is mine. It doesn't observe the body. It just observes mine, just mine. And it holds me, the person, to exist inherently. So just you held as I these drops of sperm and blood of others. So I add to that. So you held as I, or you held as mine, sorry, these drops of sperm and ovum of others. So I came to then, through the view of the Persian collection, holding myself. Also, sorry, I go back from that statement. So because we have an innate grasping at I, we can also infer that we have an innate grasping at what is mine, the aggregates. And we came to see the aggregates, the body, as being mind through a process of familiarity, although the things that have generated them came from my father and mother. So similarly, Geshe Tsultrim says, we can also develop a process of familiarity in which we think that others are also mine. So rather than thinking of others as I, we're going to think about them as mine. And if we go back to a few weeks ago when we spoke about the body as being a collection, so we said that the body has different parts, arms and legs and so forth. And although individually they are different, it is still suitable to think about all of them as my body. So similarly, when we think of Geshe-la's reasoning, we can think that although sentient beings are others, living beings are others, they're not me, they're others. Still, we can familiarize a mind with thinking of them as mine, because just as well we came to think of this body as mine, so we can also think of other living beings as mine, in the same way that we take care of what is mine, the body. We protect it from suffering, we make sure that it becomes well, or that we experience pleasure and so forth. Similarly, we can then attain happiness for the sake of others or dispel the suffering because they are mine. So Jen says, thinking of the body as mine is because we normally don't distinguish between body and mind. While in Buddhism, we distinctly see a body as different from mind. Well, I think that we think of the body as mind because, first of all, it's much coarser than a consciousness. I mean, to think of a consciousness, I think that in our culture, accepting that consciousness exists and also then trying to understand what consciousness is relatively a new science in our background. So in Buddhism, they've been speaking about it for a couple of millennia, but I think that here in our cultural context, it's still rather new. So the body is coarser than the mind, and also speaking about mind is quite new. Now, what about kind of thinking of the mind as being mine? We do have that, it seems. Yeah, in my point of view. Yeah. Yeah, my mind. But it's still kind of a thing that I wonder if, like, for example, I wonder how old the word mind is. Like, for example, yeah, like for example, if 1,000 years ago, whether people say in my mind, blah, 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 whether was mind as widely used as we use it now. Now, when we say my mind, it seems to us quite clear that there is mind that is separate from the body. It wasn't interchangeably used for a long time with brain in general. The Greek had investigation of mind. I think, therefore I am, isn't it? No, that's later. Isn't it a Greek? French, sorry. Descartes. I think I have to kind of upgrade my philosophy classes. Yep. So anyway, anyone, Socrates, but have you got anything else to say in relation to what Jen said? So Jen was saying that thinking of the body as mind is like that because we normally don't distinguish between the body and mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so way past Freud, there's been a research on mind. So who was that? Joyce? William James spoke about needing to develop introspection, mind being aware of mind, but he didn't believe that this is possible. When was that? 1880, 1890. And so I'm just repeating it for the people at home. So then, you know, it went on till the 1910, more or less, until behaviorism came in and just wiped it all, becoming focused on materialism again. The mind to me feels under the control of the I, the autonomous controller. Yeah, well, this is what we want, that we seek to disprove, isn't it? That there is an autonomous controller of my body and my mind, which already kind of, it's a good point that you come up with, because when we look at the view of the Persian collection, all schools of thought say that grasping at the self of persons is the root of cyclic existence. Actually, the middle way consequence school goes beyond that, and I'll say that in a second. But when we look at the positions of the schools of thought, they say that when we think of the attitude that we have with respect to the body, when we think of the body as mine, we think that there is an independent controller, self of person, that is controlling the body. So for example, grasping at a self-sufficient, substantially existing I to be that which enjoys the body. So the body is an object of enjoyment of a self-sufficient, substantially existing I. So in this way, we apply the grasping at the self of persons to the aggregates according to the lower schools of thought. The middle way autonomy school has a slightly different presentation to that. I mean, it agrees with that, but it doesn't have a problem with applying the grasping at the self of persons directly to the aggregates, which are phenomena. It has no problems with that. But the middle way consequence school of thought says that, well, grasping the view of the Persian collection is root of cyclic existence. So here in English, we have to say a root or the root of cyclic existence. So we can say that the consequence school says that it is a root of cyclic existence, but it's not the only root. There are also other things which are roots of cyclic existence. So altogether, all ignorance of grasping at a self, all of it without exception, is the root of cyclic existence. And the view of the Persian collection is part of it. It's different to other schools of thought who say that no, not all grasping at a self are the roots of cyclic existence. It is only the view of the Persian collection that is the root of cyclic existence. So the innate view of the Persian collection, that is the root of cyclic existence. So that's the addition of the consequence school, right? Adding all grasping at a self to be roots of cyclic existence. So Eva is asking, we created the concept owner and add this upon the mind and body. Rather than created it, this is beginningless ignorance, right? Beginningless ignorance that conceives of the self to exist inherently. Now, this is, you could say, the innate grasping at the self. Nagesha mentioned today Nagarjuna's verse that says, so long as I conceive of the aggregates, for that long I conceive of the I. So when we think of, for example, when we think of the body of others, when we see the body of others, what appears to us, for example, is an inherently existing form aggregate of another person. So we conceive of this aggregate as inherently existing body. And it depends upon that, we then conceive of an independently existing person. And we can say that also with respect to ourselves. Like, for example, if I if I have pain in my leg, and I think that my leg is in pain, it depends upon conceiving my leg to be an independently existing leg, I conceive of an independently existing I. So long as we conceive of the aggregates for that long, we will conceive of the I. From that comes action, so karma, and then birth. But then to undo that, we need first of all to realize the emptiness of ourselves. When we realize the emptiness of ourselves, on that basis, we can then easily understand the selfness of phenomena. So altogether, just since this is a little bit complicated, I think, let's just summarize this point. It was in verse 158. Therefore, just as you held as I, or you can say mine, those drops of sperm and blood of others, which is your own body, likewise, you can familiarize with thinking of others as mine. And then in verse 159 and 160, actually, let's look at the outline. We'll look at the way to practice the application of this attitude. So the way to practice the application of this attitude is not just to suffice with exchanging a self-cherishing attitude with an attitude of cherishing others. It's also to become active, right? So when we're influenced by an attitude of cherishing others, when we cherish others more than ourselves, it should translate to our actions. In some sense, you can say that if it doesn't translate to the way that you behave, if it doesn't translate to the way that you act, it is likely that we haven't done it so far to an adequate level. So it says, having thoroughly examined the purpose of others, you shall still whatever appears on your body and use it for the benefit of others. So I thought that it's interesting because Shantideva here obviously is speaking from the point of view of a monk. Not to say that only monks should practice that, but I think that when you think of the traditional ideal of being a monk, where you get by on less and you have no personal property, and you keep only a set of robes and you go on alms and so forth, it makes sense in that framework to think that I'm not holding any private property, and as soon as I have something, I will keep the bare minimum for myself and I shall give the rest for others. I think that when you think of how do I apply to my everyday life in this context, I mean, particularly I think that if you're a layperson, then rather than going to an extreme in thinking that I need to give up everything that I have and this is not possible for me and therefore I cannot practice the Bodhisattva conduct, or to think that since this is what I need to do, then definitely now I have to rid of all the things that I have and give it to others, then you can still think of how do you habituate yourself gradually for sharing whatever you have with others. So you might have a bank account. So rather than thinking that I need to then keep the bare minimum for myself and just give everything to others, it's excellent if you can do that. But probably a more practical approach to that would be to start practicing generosity on a small scale and increase that over time. So Shantideva says, the other commentary says, the omniscient Longchenpa illustrated use of the word spy in this verse by saying, when you're cutting felt, a dog will not spy on you. It's kind of quite a cryptic statement. So Shantideva considers that when in the past he looked upon the belongings, food, clothing, and goods of other people, he tried various ploys in the hope of manipulating them into giving him what they had, just like a dog watching people eating meat in the hope of getting some. I think that probably all of us are familiar with that attitude of trying to get other people to give us something. But from now on, he says, he will instead spy on his own belongings and through through other people's eye, and to help others. He will discipline himself to all that he has, giving it away to those who have nothing. He reflects that in the past he used to be envious of others. From now on, he will be envious of himself. It's quite an interesting concept, to be envious of yourself. And this is what the point that we covered in the text. Again, putting yourself in the position of others and seeing actually that how well we're doing. I mean, particularly I think that when we think of our situation here and enjoying this material of this text by Shantideva, we have external conditions that make it possible for us to do so. We have the internal condition that makes it possible for us to do that. We are fortunate. Now, in that sense, we can be jealous of ourselves. Yeah, people of India might be jealous of us right now. Actually, I thought about it, in relation to what we said today's teaching. So I have, when I was over the years through my visits to Bodh Gaya, I've been eating in a restaurant called Muhammad, and I know some of the people, some of the staff members. So one of them texted me yesterday and said, it's been going really hard. He's been out of work for more than a year. He has twin daughters, he has a wife and so on. And he said it's really hard. He has no money, and this is where he finished. And the bottom line is that, could you please send some money? And I had a few of those messages in the last few months, and I think that it's easy to at some point become a little bit weary of that and think that, once again they're asking money. But today, in the teaching, I thought, actually, why not? If you have some, you don't have to give everything, but you can give some. If it helps them, why not? So I think that this is I wanted to bring it up just because we sometimes get to that way of thinking that, if I give up everything, what would be left for me? So we don't have to give up everything, but we can still give a little and habituate ourselves to a little bit to giving. Anyway, let's leave it here for now. So also dedicate to Geshe-Sherpa's long life and good health, swift recovery. Due to this virtue, may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all transmigratory beings without exception to that state. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that the risen not decline, but increase more and more. In this land encircled by snowy mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso. Please remain until samsara ends. You uphold the subduers more way, who serves as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Majunat's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, protect of myself and others, your disciples. Please live long. Thank you. Sorry? Yeah. Yeah, I was here as a volunteer. Also, he has COVID. All right. Yeah, he's at Copan at the moment. Yeah. I've been talking to another guy, Alex, who has been teaching English at Copan, and he said that so it was actually pretty interesting. It's just, I think that a couple of weeks ago, he returned to Nepal. He just made it into Nepal from the UK, maybe. I thought myself, holy moly, who goes into Nepal now? So he gets into Copan Monastery. It's like an epicenter of COVID-19. So he says that he's still in the clear. Hopefully things go well. Yeah.